years old, and I still have not completely convinced her that there are no sharks in the Niagara River, connecting Lake Erie to Lake Ontario. But as far as tonight goes, because I don't think she's watching, there's a shark right there. That is the deep end, Adam. There it is. See it right there? It just jumped up.
Love it.
Maybe I'm feeling self-conscious about weather after spending a spectacular weekend in Canton, Ohio. Here you and I are in Western New York. The green screen is in the wash tonight, so we're doing it from outside. If you care, behind me is Niagara Falls, Ontario. You can maybe see the skyline where the falls are right there, and there could be fireworks before the night is out, but I doubt it.
Wow.
And speaking of fireworks, here he is, the two-time defending FBG champion at FFPC, Dr. Abib Agbetoba. Can we call you Doctor? What do you go by with your friends?
Honestly, people call me AB. Some people call me Abib, which is my kind of real name, and then my family calls me Abby, which you may hear on the podcast. I honestly don't care. I actually prefer you don't call me Doc.
Okay,
AB
that's easy enough. AB works. It's an honor to talk to you. I've watched you a few times, and you and Draft Sharks have worked together. Then we even competed against each other in the Draft Sharks Invitational, which we will get to in a few minutes. But it is, Adam, it is right in the heart of the season here.
Yeah, this is awesome. I hate to say, but I've kind of turned the pages on the football guys now. It's main event season for me at least. So it's good. I don't know how Abib's doing in these from the football guy streets, but yeah. So it's a really cool part of the year. I'm going to Kentucky this weekend for that event, so I'm super excited.
How about you, AB? Where are you at in your? What percent of the way in are you to your completion here? I know you have a main event tonight, and then we all have Vegas coming up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So honestly, I think I'm drafting a lot less these days. I've seen quite a bit of shift in the boards that for me has been unpleasant to say the least. And I've kind of had to adjust to the new reality of where players that were once going 2 to 3 rounds later, have, made that, seismic shift, a few rounds, more so than I would like or more so than I'm accustomed to. And not to say that it's wrong to take those players there because that's where we are now. But it's hard to draft a team that I like more than some of the other teams that I drafted only a few months back. So I was pretty heavy at that time. So now I'm kind of cooling off and like you guys entering main event waters. A lot of sharks out there.
I think you're talking about the wide receiver mania that's going on lately. Am I right?
Absolutely. And it's not, it's not just necessarily 1 or 2 players here or there. I think for the most part, drafters are just sharper than they used to be. And I don't think it took much time for people to realize that there was quite a bit of value. We talk about wide receiver being so deep. I think it's kind of shallow given where they're going. So, deep is kind of a relative terms. I like deep when it's, I can, draft a full set of team and then still find wide receivers, that I can stash on my bench. And there are a few guys out there like that, but for the most part, these guys that you look at as having the potential to be wide receiver 2s, maybe even wide receiver 1s, those guys are, going fairly early, and it's hard to kind of cherry pick those guys later on. So, try to get those, couple of running backs early on maybe, and then, you're hitting wide receivers, and before you know it, you're in the 6th round looking at guys that, you're not so quite sure about starting week in and week out.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. Like, I've done, I think maybe 25 or 26 football guys. And it's just like, if I get the itch, like, am I going to build a team better than what I've already built? It depends on what my drafts look like. So I'm 26 teams deep. I have 2 number 1 picks. It's like, if I knew I was going to get the McCaffrey build, okay, I'll do another one, but I might get 11 for the 25th time.
Exactly.
So it's like, do I want to build another? Is it even worth it? So yeah, I'm totally with you. I wish they did like a football, kind of like they did for the best ball tournament. I wish I did a football guys 1 and then a football guys 2, so I can build the same roster twice. You know what I mean? But I don't think they've done that yet.
Well, you have some experience with 11, I guess, AB.
Yeah,
Yeah, the back end has found me quite often this draft season, so
that's
I
right.
don't mind it all too much.
Well, by the way, I mean, I think it's still a good point to know when to fold them, if you will, to know when to lay off. I mean, I think you're saying you recognize sort of a shift in strategy, and you felt like maybe your edge was not as pronounced. So slow down, and then you still have X number of teams, which is relatively high volume, I would assume, and then you don't want your odds to diminish. So
Yeah.
that's tough. I mean, discipline is not easy for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not easy for me either. Trust me. But yeah, no, 100% right. I always get asked the question. Is it better to draft early or late? And that just depends on the year. So far this year, and a lot could change. We still have a few weeks before the season starts. But so far, I felt like we got a pretty good advantage earlier on. Granted that you missed on some of the injuries, but every on a day like today, where there's so much news that's come out. I will kind of hop into a draft to see if I can take advantage of some ADP that maybe hasn't fully corrected itself, or that maybe some guys I can get at value before they really start to rise to where they need to be.
You know what else is interesting about that is I think it's sort of counter to how, I don't know, the layman or a lot of people who just play fantasy football more casually would talk, which is on a day like this, AB, they would say, this is why you don't draft all year. Like, this is why you wait. And you're basically saying the opposite, which is, when you see your edge, you want to be all over it. And then when it changes, you have to be willing to change with it.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to my co-host and dear friend Deo. He always says, embrace the chaos. He loves it. Like this time of year when people aren't sure who's starting or injuries occur, he just loves it. He loves the chaos. And I think it's it's good for those of us who've really kind of done that deep dive, and so when the chaos occurs, you have a clear picture in terms of, or a clear picture through the smoke. So hopefully that's the case. We'll see. We don't know until we know. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love the chaos. I'm right there with Deo.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine, Sam, texted me today. I own a bunch of leagues with him, and he was like, "Man, I was all over James Robinson, and now everyone's going to be taking him with the Etienne news." I'm like, "Well, bro, you should have been drafted in May, June, and July with the rest of us then, because you could have had him. Now it's over, bro. Sorry."
Yeah, he's and that's a good player. A topic that always we often talk about your guys, and trying to get your guys. And for the most part, I love to get players at value. Granted, there's some players that I just think I won't probably draft unless their ADPs drop 3 or 4 rounds. But James Robinson was a guy that I wasn't necessarily against, but I just stayed away from that entire situation. I wasn't an Etienne fan, but knew he could probably take just enough. But there were a few spots where Robinson fell to the 7th, 8th round. I think in some drafts I saw him in the 9th round, and that's when you just kind of have to humble yourself a bit and know that you may not be right on a certain situation, or you may luck up. And getting some of these guys at value that don't necessarily seem all that appealing at up front at cost may end up paying off in the long run.
Can we talk for a quick second longer about what kind of an advantage you might think a Henderson Robinson or a Robinson Henderson team might have right now? Is it likely to shift again in the next 2 weeks? Is it maybe too tough to tell? I mean, they're not going to be that many teams with both. Yeah. But if you built a certain way, there'd be some probably.
Yeah, there'll definitely be some teams that significantly gain from some of the injuries. The way that I look at it, I mean, these injuries happen. I mean, you guys know they happen year in and year out in the off season, and they happen in season as well. Drafting is, I don't want to say a small part. Obviously, it plays a significant part, but in-season management, sit decisions, waiver wire decisions, those are all critical. So I try not to get caught up in, the idea that, oh, man, I didn't get any of those late round James Robinson or any late round Darrell Henderson, and just try to focus on kind of the teams that I have. I was fortunate enough. Darrell Henderson was one of the guys that I kind of had in my that handcuff tier, and that's a tier that I just attack year in and year out. I'll bypass guys that may have starting positions and go for these guys that really kind of have that league winning upside. But even in this situation, it sounds great when you're drafting it. If Cam Akers goes down, I'm going to have this guy who's going to be potential RB1, and then it happens, and then you start to realize, okay, well, is he really going to be an RB1? Is he going to be an RB2? So I try to think about that before I draft the players. That way I'm prepared. That way I'm also not overdrafting guys. So, guys like Tony Pollard and, if you can get him, at a decent value, or Alexander Madison, and I know how he's performed in the past, but those are guys like I feel fairly comfortable with that I'm probably going to get, some strong RB2 and probably some RB1 numbers. And Henderson was kind of on the fence, so I often took him third in that tier. But a guy like James Robinson, it'll be tough. I mean, we haven't seen a lot from the Jaguars' offense this offseason. I don't think that they're showing much. Their O-line has been missing a few starters, so we'll see. But if he can put up what he put up last year, and you got him in the 7th or 8th round, you're definitely starting ahead or with a slight lead in your leagues.
Yeah, and I know we got to get to the draft recaps, but real quick, because I've heard this question asked a couple times, and I'm always interested to hear your answer, because I know you do so many football guys drafts. Is so more with Henderson, not so much with James Robinson, maybe, but. So, when you draft an all off season, right? So is this a guy, once this injury happens now, so Robinson will probably go from the 7th or 8th to maybe the 4th or something like that. But Henderson jumped up, 7 rounds. Mm-hmm. Is that someone that you're just not drafting, like after the injury, right? So now I was getting Henderson in the 11th. In these tournaments, is it even worth it to take him in the 4th round where he's going now? Because there's so many teams that already had that advantage. Like yourself and like myself, we've already built teams with him in the 11th round, So do we just avoid him now?
I actually did the exact opposite.
So
he's one of the guys. Yeah, he's
Let's
one
go.
of the guys. So initially, when the injury happened, I figured there was going to be, it was going to take some time for his value to kind of settle in. So I jumped into drafts, and I was just getting him, 6th round, then I would get him in the 5th round, then I would get him in the 4th round. Because I really think he's probably a 3rd round caliber player and has the potential to be a 2nd round caliber player. Now he's one of those guys that has a wide range of possibilities or outcomes. So, but I feel fairly comfortable. I like the way that Sean McVay's approached him from a standpoint of, you're not playing in any preseason games. We're bubble wrap type deal. We had a little injury scare recently, but he's already back at practice. So I'll continue to buy that because, again, I care about, what do I perceive his value to be at today's date? So I don't mind kind of sucking it up and taking a guy like that. Someone who's, counter to that argument, who's been difficult for me to take recently, and a guy I've literally been in love with all offseason, is Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
That's been really, really hard. And he's only gone up, 2 rounds or so, but the 7th and sometimes 8th round Jerry Jeudy's early on, I mean, they were just amazing. And I was just beating the drum, take Jerry Jeudy amongst my close friends. I didn't want everyone else to do it. Now,
of course.
Secrets has been out for a while now, but he's going, I've seen him go at 5-1, and it's hard. And he may end up belonging there. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but that's one for me that's a little bit more difficult to hit that pick in the early 5th round.
AB, we want to keep you for maybe 5-6 more minutes. We know you have a big night. So let's talk about a couple of these FBGs. You're in the 11 spot in both. I'm not sure if you remember them specifically. Maybe you're the type to remember everything about these drafts or not. I mean, that doesn't have to mean anything. Yeah. But here's a draft where you went 1, 2, 3 running back. And, some people are going to scoff at that these days, but they're not going to scoff at you. So what do you remember about this night?
Yeah, starting off 3 running backs in today's climate is going to be tough. This is something that was a lot easier to do early on. Again, when you can load up on wide receivers, because guys like Tyler Lockett, I was getting in the 6th round. So those guys are going in the 4th round now. And if you give me the option in season, it's easy to kind of look at the draft now, preseason, and have these preseason goggles on. But when you're in season, if you give me the the choice between starting a strong running back versus a strong wide receiver, running back 2 versus wide receiver 2, I'm usually going to go with the running back too, because I'm just going to go with volume, unless I know that wide receiver has a great cornerback matchup. He's in, he looks like he's in a situation where, game script is going to probably allow him to, see, significant amount of targets that game. So I like getting those running backs, and, injuries occur, and I always feel comfortable finding wide receivers late. So in this particular draft, I think going 3 running backs towards the back end is tough because you never know what's going to happen in that 6th round. So for me, the back of the 5th round. So I started off Derrick Henry. It's rare that we see him fall to the 11th, so I felt obligated to take him. He's not somebody that I'm like reaching for this year. I think we all kind of had that queasy feeling about Derrick Henry, which is probably one reason why everyone's in love with Darrington Evans this year. And then I'm just hammering Saquon in the 2nd round. If you're in a draft with me and Saquon's there in the 2nd round, you can believe I'm probably going to take him. Because again, I like targeting guys who have high upside, but also have high floors. I understand he's in a bad offense. I understand the O-line. But guess what? I've seen Christian McCaffrey excel in bad offenses with bad O-lines, with bad quarterbacks, with some of the worst quarterbacks, And I'm not talking about Cam, obviously. So I don't mind that situation. I'm willing to bet on that. Until I hear setback, I'm going under the assumption that he'll be ready week 1. And even if he's not full strength week 1, having 15 weeks of Saquon Barkley, I'll take. So I'm going to bet on talent there, and I'm going to bet that they're going to use him correctly. So I always, I love seeing him in the 2nd round. And then when he came back to me in the 3rd round, this kind of goes back to our earlier discussion about, seeing these wide receivers kind of rise. So when I'm, trying to decide between, wide receivers like Tyler Lockett, Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper versus Chris Carson, I feel more comfortable going Chris Carson there and then just taking whatever wide receiver. And I understand the idea of taking 2 of those wide receivers there, but I like to gamble. I like to, I like to be greedy, I call that, so I'm hoping that something falls to me in that 5th round. And something did fall, and it was Brandon Ayuk. That's a guy that I love. If I can get him at the back end of the 5th round, that's a guy that I absolutely love getting. Again, wide receiver 1 type build in that Shanahan offense. I mean, if we go back to the days of where he has a true wide receiver 1, who knows, okay? And we all love Trey Lance, right? So, every draft I approach, I'm like, okay, do I get to take Trey Lance's, in this draft? So I'm always targeting 49ers to some degree because I love their ease of schedule throughout the season, given how poorly they finished last year. But that O-line's back, that defense back. I think that offense has the potential to be explosive. And then, seeing Lamar or Kyler Murray in the 6th round, I'm usually opting to go with them. And that was a tough choice between Lamar versus Jerry Jeudy. And I think, maybe 6 times out of 10, I go to Lamar. But the other time, the other 4 out of 10, I probably go Jerry Jeudy. That was a tough decision. I think I took almost the entire clock on that. And you could argue either or. I ended up coming back with Sutton, which I wasn't happy about. I was really hoping Tyler Boyd would fall to me. And so that's kind of how that draft started off.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I find myself kind of doing the same thing too, Abib, is like when you get like there's guys that you target there kind of like in the 5th through 7th round. And if they're not there and you don't love somebody else, there's usually one of those high upside quarterbacks. You know what I mean? So it's like, do I take a guy like maybe like a Chase Edmonds that I don't really believe in because I need a running back? Or do I just take, Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott, who I know are going to do really well, and just kind of pivot from my strategy for just a second and then go back and then get back on track. So I think that's a really good point about that.
I feel like we're treating quarterbacks like we've treated tight ends in the past. Every year we say tight end super deep, and then there's only like 2 or 3 guys that are like really worth anything.
Right.
And so I think like this year we're thinking QB is like super deep, and it does seem super deep. I do love a lot of the later round guys. There are a lot of guys that I'm like happy taking later on. But again, like, I always like encourage people to like think back to like last season when you were in season. Like how many of these guys that you think they're, locks, did you feel comfortable starting week in and week out? And then how comfortable did you feel going against the guy that was starting the Patrick Mahomes, the Kyler Murray, the Lamars? some of those guys just had such significant upside. So I try to like remove myself from the end of season numbers, even the points per game numbers, because some of the, some people have spike weeks. I love Seattle's offense, but if we were looking back on the 2020 Seattle offense, like that's a team that like started off very, very strong.
Yeah.
Ended up hurting you, I had a league, the league that won last year. I always kind of go back to, I think I had a choice between DK Metcalf and DJ Chark. And I can't remember what round it was, but I ended up going DJ Chark. This was the team that won it all.
Yeah.
But if I had gone DK Metcalf, then I probably would not have started Logan Thomas. I probably would have started, DK Metcalf, and I probably would not have won the overall tournament. So sometimes you can kind of get lucky in those situations. So that's kind of off topic, but
no, it's true.
Well, I had a team where I started at 10 or 11 in FBG recently. I went Hawkinson at 3. I think tight end is almost the key to everything. Mm-hmm. And then Kyler Murray, and there I am staring at a pink and a purple kind of high up, and I know that's not allowed to work. But you never know. Like your point, the overall point here is, I think, variety, be flexible, and everybody says, be able to pivot during a draft. This draft is not that long ago. I mean, you're good, but if this is a long time ago, there's no way Terrace Marshall, Marquez Callaway, and Brian Edwards are a run in the later rounds. So that looks pretty good right now. Let's get to the second one, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah. And you brought up a good point too about starting tight end and quarterback like early on before you fill out your starting roster. That is tough to do, and you are always fighting from behind. But if you hit, you hit. But yeah, that's a tough thing to take both of those positions early.
Right. The key spot for me in that draft was 5'11", and I wasn't really ready for Tyler Boyd there, who went in 7 in yours. Yeah. But he's climbing. It's one of these where there's a lot of yellow, especially on the left of the screen, and I just couldn't do it. Then I lost him, and we'll see. We'll see you in the finals. So this team 11. You said about Barkley, and there he is again. There's Ayuk and Jackson again in 5'6". What's different? You have Henderson here. What jumps out at you as you look at it?
Yeah, so I felt like this draft I lucked out a little bit in terms of getting some of my flex positions, particularly at the wide receiver, getting Devontae Smith in the 8th round. I think come September, Labor Day weekend, we're probably going to hear some good news come out of camp. He's already been practicing in full.
Agreed.
It's going to take a catch or so for it to go viral, and then he's going to be back up to the 7th round and likely back up to the 6th round. So because when we're looking at the wide receivers there, I'm honestly not buying any Jalen Reagor type hype. I don't feel that he's a great wide receiver. I understand buying him at like the least cost, but I just think that from a wide receiver standpoint, they don't really have anyone, and I love his talent. So we saw a glimpse of it, in terms of his ability to be able to separate. It's kind of a question mark coming out of college, given his size. But I think someone like if you can get him in the 7th and 8th round to fill out your last flex position, it's great. And then, Brandon Cooks is the guy that I think I'm on an island with that guy.
You love him. That's your boy.
That's my boy. And I probably took him a little. It's weird because sometimes I get him like in the 8th, 9th round, and sometimes I don't. So if I need that like second flex position filled out, and I'm not loving what's on the board, I will go ahead and reach and take him. And just like in many of the recent boards lately, you can see a lot of yellow has already kind of gone. So if I didn't go Brandon Cooks there, I think I would have gone with someone like I think the next available up would have been like a Michael and Michael Gallup, and those are like best ball guys to me. Those are not guys that I feel comfortable starting week in and week out. I don't like starting my lineup with guys that I'm hoping to have a big play. If I feel like if I'm in that position that I didn't do as good a job as I wanted drafting.
Sure. I don't want to jump ahead here, but I know we do so many drafts, and it's like it almost becomes monotonous, and it's just. But to me, this offseason, nothing feels better in drafts than drafting Justin Fields. Like you got him here in the 14th round, and it's just like. Nothing feels better than when Fields is on the board when you want him. Yeah. And you took him, and you have Lamar Jackson, but I have a feeling you just took him here because it's the freaking 14th round.
You could not resist. I mean, you're not going to play him. But you could not resist.
Couldn't resist.
I know it.
You know,
I know.
I could not resist, but I also didn't want anyone else having him. So,
That's
you
it.
know,
Right.
call it what you
That's
want, but I actually I was in a draft not too long ago, and I think some of these guys, some of these high end guys, the Murrays, the Jacksons, etc. Yeah, I usually don't like taking a second tight end, but I really do love the idea of these, some of these younger quarterbacks once they start, potentially, having some explosive weeks. And there, who knows what's going to happen throughout the season. I've always been someone who's usually carried multiple QBs when I can, when my roster allows. And I know that's debatable, but in light of COVID, you just never know what's going to happen. And the last thing I want to do is be in a situation where I literally have to go to the waivers and pick up Sam Darnold.
Well, not only COVID, but when you're setting 50, 60 lineups, I am not trying to grind quarterback waivers. Let me just draft Justin Fields as my number 2, and I'll be happy with that.
I don't want to admit it, but I absolutely think about that when I'm doing some of these drafts.
Real quick, Rashad Penny. What do you think? Is that sort of a why not, or is that more of a that I expect something good to happen?
So I have him kind of in the same tier as a Tony Pollard, a league winning upside pick. So I'm never in the business. I think I probably did in this draft for whatever reason, but I usually like to hammer running backs. I mean, I feel like I can never have too many running backs. I have some drafts where I literally have just 4 wide receivers. Plenty of drafts where I just have 5 wide receivers, especially if I feel comfortable with my 3 of those guys. So Penny, I love getting these guys where if an injury occurs, they immediately kind of step in and can provide you, I don't want to say RB1, but RB2 numbers. His first showing in his first preseason game back wasn't all the greatest, from an explosive standpoint, but I've heard some good things from camp, or at least earlier in OTAs, about how he's, kind of shed a little bit of weight. He looks a little bit quicker. And so I feel like these guys just need a little bit of game reps. So he's someone that I can envision and picture that if Carson were to go down, and again, the Seattle offense, I really want a piece of this year. But if Carson were to go down, he's someone that would see the early down work and would also see the goal line work and would see some passing down work. They actually used him quite a bit, I think, last year when he was healthy in the passing down on third downs last year.
All right. Well, we've kept you a long time. We only have one more quick thing to do. And Adam, if you don't mind putting the Draft Sharks Invitational League 4 up, I just recently realized there was a mistake in one of my picks in round 7. That should be someone else. I was so excited about that. And now I was also excited, AB, to see you go on with Matt that night. And maybe Adam and Jared were there, or Jared was in this draft. So it was Matt, Adam, and you. And you're like, a couple of guys you wanted. There's Ayuk. Before I even knew you, I took Ayuk from you. And then Etienne.
I remember that pick.
Yes. Would you ever have picked Etienne at 706? And, is there a way I can get you to trade? Are there trades?
I have very, very little Etienne, but I also have very little James Robinson. I'm just a backfield that I've kind of stayed away from.
And Adam, that's you too in your portfolio. None of either guy.
None of either guy, and that's almost like, would you rather have me? I'd prefer to have none of either than to have 5 of each. Because James Robinson to me wasn't a league winner going from the 7th round to the 3rd or 4th round, but not having any ETN is to me is pretty awesome. So
when that happens, none of either is a win, right?
Correct.
I
think so. Yeah.
Addition by subtraction. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So.
All right, listen. AB. Well, you have time to get a shower and a drink in before 9, I think.
Thanks for having me, guys. I always love being on with you guys, and best of luck throughout the season.
See you in Vegas, brother.
Yeah, see you in Vegas. Great job.
See you in Vegas.
All right. Awesome stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn there, and 2 times at the 11, but he's drafted from every position many times, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's good. I was super interested to hear his take on the Henderson. He's a lot of people stopped taking him. I am one of those people who just stopped taking Henderson in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, but he's taking him there because he believes he's a second round talent. So he's going to keep taking him in the 4th or the 5th or wherever he's going. So I
like it too.
Interesting.
I like it too. Yep. And he practiced with a non-contact jersey today, but I want to be optimistic about that.
Yeah.
So main events are underway. We talked a little bit with AB about the wide receiver wars going on right now, if you will, in fantasy football. Like, I mean, I'm relatively new to this game, Adam, but it seems like what's happening this year is sort of a distinctive philosophical moment in fantasy football. And you have the wide receiver crowd. Here's Abib saying, I'm going to stop, right? Like, that's a big deal. I'm out because the advantage he thought he was getting with wide receiver heavy drafts is gone.
Yeah. Super interesting. And what's, there's been a lot of injuries to running backs, right? We've had, well, not a lot, but some significant injuries. Akers, Etienne. Same thing with the Michael Thomas, right? So you got them. I mean, he wasn't hurt; he just had surgery from an old injury. But then you get the guy like Etienne, where I think you brought it up earlier. He was the one kind of detour that these 0 RB guys were making, that the heavy wide receiver drafters were making. Hey, I like the detour for Etienne because I can see, top 10 upside from him, and now he's hurt. And that's the whole. See, so to me, it's not 0 RB, it's not heavy running back. To me, it's about who's going to score me the most points in the flex, right? So historically, through these drafts, I wrote an article for DraftSharks.com on FFPC main event strategy, and one of the things you look at is, once you get past the top 12 running backs, the 13th receiver and the 13th running back, all the way through like the first 6 or 7 rounds, the receivers outscore those running backs in that range. So that's why I've just been pounding receiver, because historically receivers outscore running backs, and you want to load those receivers up into the flex. And I think what Abib was saying is people are just getting smarter. They're realizing that, they're reading articles, they're listening to podcasts, and you can't get them off of these receivers. Now, Jared Smola, what he's brought up is, now what that's doing is that's pushing those running backs down to the point where, their values now, if you can pick the ones that hit and don't get hurt, so that's where I'm struggling, Mike, is I just don't see any running backs in those rounds. Carson's in an exception, I just don't see any running backs that I really like in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that is taking me off of receiver. I don't know. What do you think?
I think a key point remains the frequency of injuries at the position, and it is Russian roulette. Cam Akers in early drafts and Etienne, like, there was just no predicting that. You can go a little bit of distance on will they play in the preseason. Akers, however, was never going to play in the preseason, and he went down for the year, and Henderson wasn't either, and he got hurt too.
Right.
Like,
that's right.
The Rams are about not going to play in the preseason. They haven't lost Henderson, but 2 running back injuries. Does any team have more? And they're the team that doesn't play the guys in the preseason. Like, you cannot avoid it. It's the plague. And so that running back life is a big part of that point. Your receivers are just going to be more stable and more reliable. So I think it's really cool. It's just like, as somebody that just likes it, even from the outside, the spectator aspect of it, I like the debates. I like the dueling philosophies, if you will. And really what it comes down to for a guy like yourself and Abib, there should be plus EV all over the place. More time spent in picking out your drafts, more time in figuring out who you're up against, more value in researching who you're playing against, because there are like 2 ways of doing things right now, and sort of a hybrid. You could be both. And if you know your field well enough, you can benefit every time.
Absolutely. And then there even becomes a point where the 0 RB guys, I just listened to Sean Siegel, who's like the inventor of the 0 RB, talking about like how he would take, who was he talking about? He would take, not Zeke. Barkley. He would take Barkley in the second round because of the potential of him being a top 2 running back this year. Like eventually there comes a point where even 0 RB, like you just have to look at it and go, okay, could this guy get hurt? Sure. But anybody can get hurt. What's the upside? What does it do for me? Pete Over's a huge 0 RB guy. Won the Draft House Invitational last year. First round pick was a running back. Did it Dalvin Cook. I think I missed 2 games or 3 games and he smashed. Like, you're right. Dueling strategies, dueling philosophies, and everyone laughs when you just say, well, if you just pick the right guys, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what your philosophy or your strategy is. If you good luck, but good luck. Right. It's almost impossible. So, and even Abib said, he DJ Chark, DK Metcalf, clang, brick. He took DJ Chark and he won the whole thing. You don't have to be right all the time. That's what's beautiful about this thing. You don't have to be right all the time. You just got to get right and lucky, and it's better to be lucky than good. So
what he's saying is it was better to not be right. It was better to be wrong.
That's right.
The way it fell, and that's a lot of games are like that. Sometimes it just turns out the other way, and that's how football is.
That's right.
Somebody makes a field goal to go up 6. That's the field goal of death. They lose by 1 on a touchdown at the last minute.
That's right.
So anything on Jacksonville for you as you sort of grind? You've got the weekend in Kentucky coming up. Everything will probably be adjusted by then. Maybe there'll be more injuries by then, but it's another reason for teams to take it slow this week. I feel like the receivers bump up a little bit. Maybe that's obvious. Chenault is obvious, and Robinson, of course. But is there anything else you'd want to do there?
Yeah, I think it's obviously Robinson, but I think it's a huge boost for Chenault because I have quite a bit of Chenault, but I was kind of like, I didn't love it because I did think Etienne and him were kind of had the same role, right? As those big slots. Well, now there's no Etienne, and man, Chenault might be take the biggest leap, I think, out of anyone other than James Robinson. So I'm back to drafting him and feeling comfortable about it. But that's probably it. Like I don't Carlos Hyde. I mean, he's a guy that Abib talked about pounding those kind of handcuff running backs. He's a guy that even if Robinson goes down, what's Hyde going to do? They'd probably get someone else involved and trade for someone or whatever before Hyde wins you a league. So yeah, I think those are kind of my biggest takeaways there.
Tony Jones, by the way, from that game last night, I drafted him. I was up in a slow draft, and why not? It was late. So Kentucky, Adam, we follow you. We love you. We're interested in your life and your career. We had a good time in Canton. What do we need to know about Kentucky this weekend?
So I'm super excited for Kentucky because I've never actually been there. My first year drafting, and it was last year. I did a couple of big paybacks. Those are $1,000 each. Did a couple of those. Lost McCaffrey in one, cashed in the other. The cool thing about Kentucky is you have to start 3 receivers. It's 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 1 flex. And it's 3rd round reversal, which adds a whole nother element. And you use your waiver money, your season-long fab budget, to bid on your draft position. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this because I wanted to get your take. I'm 25 football guy drafts deep, all done. I had 2 number 1 picks, so I have Christian McCaffrey twice. All my main events are spoken for. I have no number 1 picks.
Yep.
Do I go into this Kentucky and bid on a couple of – so I've got 4 big paybacks and I think 2 or 3 main events there. Do I bid a bunch on the number 1 pick a couple times to get some McCaffrey shares?
Well, you could. I mean, everybody seems to think 101 is a big advantage this year. But I also think, I guess I'm thinking about the point we just talked about, which is running back injuries. You're going to want that waiver money. That waiver money is power. And as you get late, and if you have the most, you have power over your opponents. So, I don't know. I haven't won anything yet, but I tend to slow play these, and I might be the type to try to pick the end of the draft or the middle. What I think I would not do, and I think you would agree, you might not want to tell me you agree, but I think you would, is not base your decision on the rest of your portfolio. Like really, if you have X number of teams here, but I would say if you want one thing from me, it would be this. Forget that.
Yeah.
Like, what is the best right now? I mean, you could go crazy trying to analyze your opponents, and who even knows who they are at this point.
Sure.
But I think 101 is great. I think the bottom is probably great. And I think the rest of it's largely the same.
Yeah. So as far as looking at it from like a micro, so because it's third round reversal, the picks that go for the most are the number 1 and then like 12, because you get 12, 13, and 25, 24, whatever.
12, 24, 12, 13, and 25. Right.
25. Yes. So yeah, I think, correct. I think I don't want to have to worry about the rest of the portfolio that I'm putting together. I do think I want maybe a Christian McCaffrey in there, but then there's something to be said for being in the middle and just taking whatever value falls. I think what I'm going to really do is just look at it, because I have to get out of the FFPC mode, right? Get into Kentucky mode. Kentucky mode, and see where the pockets of receivers, because you have to start 3 receivers, so they go off the board. You think these FFPC drafts are crazy. These receivers are going to be gone by the 4th round. So I want to find, like, in the draft ADP where the pockets of receivers that I like are in this, the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And I think I'm going to bid according to that, so I can sit comfy in those pockets and take the receivers that I like. So I'm not reaching on receivers that I don't like just because I need to start 3 of them. So I think there is some ADP out there. They've posted some draft boards already they started their main event in Cincinnati last weekend. So yeah,
Adam,
I'm going to look at those.
Is it tight end premium?
It is not tight end premium. Nope.
Okay. Well, that relieves the pressure. I'm telling you, these FFPC drafts, the tight end is the key.
Yeah.
I mean, we did pros versus Joes, and I really grinded in prep for that with you and me.
Yep.
And, like, if we don't get the right tight end, eventually you run out of time, and then you're just guessing. Now, that's best ball, so that's a little different. But there is, like, at 101, for instance, in that, I know that's not what we're talking about. In Kentucky, it might be easier, but that's 212. If you want one of those top guys, and it still might be too late. So 212 for Kittle, maybe. And then 312 is probably you're going to have an option. If you're willing to go Andrews, you'll have an option at 312 or 4-1, 2 picks. But, you're on McCaffrey, and then it's 2 receivers and a tight end. If you don't go tight end there, you and I didn't in FFPC, fine. We got to Higbee. I feel like we made it. But, we liked Higbee.
Yes.
If you don't, and you don't like Fant that much, or Goddard that much, or Gesicki that much, you're in trouble.
Yeah, right.
I mean, last night, I just want to add, like, last night, Kevin English did a draft in the main event.
Yep.
And that was he did a great job. That was very sharp, and Draft Sharks has a show. There was also an Establish the Run main event the same time, a different draft, though. And Silva was like, we have to take Andrews here or else we're in trouble. And I thought he was right. And they loved their draft after that.
Yeah.
So you have to like Andrews well enough. And, now he's bumped up because all their receivers are hurt, or Hawkinson. You have to buy into that, or Pitts. Otherwise, you got to scramble.
Yeah, no, I completely agree there. And the advantage is they do go a little bit later. The drafts I was looking at had Andrews and Hawkinson in the 5th round. So
okay, in Kentucky.
Yep. So you can even wait till that next turn, because, like I'm telling you, these receivers go like crazy. So I gotta find the pocket there too where that fits, and then I gotta get out. It's a single league, right? It's not a tournament, right? So, like, you got to get out of that big tournament mode. You got to get out. It's a whole different thing. So,
right.
I think it's going to be super fun. It's going to be great. Scott, the Chasing the Helmet guys are going to be out there. Chad Schrader is going to be there. Dave Gerzak, Eric Balkman. I'm sure I'm going to forget some other guys' names, but
John McEntee, any chance he'll be there?
I don't think John will be. Danny Mueller will be there. So, kind of, it's going to be really fun to hang out with those guys, and they're all, awesome drafters. So it's
Heather Graham. Any chance of Heather Graham making an appearance?
I'll take a picture of her and I if she's there.
I'm doing a main event with Louis G, who's been on this show. He was on last week.
Yep.
And Scott is in our group.
I think Scott's in one of mine too. Yeah, I think they're in a month. They're all over the place. I
thought I was so cool, but he's in everybody's main event.
He's in everybody's. That's
but
right.
That's Friday night. Thursday, this is 2 weeks and 2 days away. Thursday morning is Maine. I do a afternoon show in Buffalo. That'll be noon to 4 Pacific.
Yep.
5 o'clock for the Planet Hollywood FFPC party. 9 o'clock, you and I for the bare knuckle. That'll be an all-time great day. Or terrible. Or
awful.
I mean, we'll see on Friday how we thought it went. But
that's right. That's right.
I'm ready for that bare knuckle.
Listen,
give me something. Throw something at me. I'm ready.
The closer we get to the bare knuckle, the more I just want you to do the whole thing. That's just how, like, the closer we get, you're so impressive the way that you're just.
I'm not that impressive. Look at my shirt. Look, come on.
I'm getting texts at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're just rattling off the 6th round ADP. Bing, 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 bing.
What was that? So you were in.
I was doing a main event with Jared.
A main event with Gilds and Jared.
Gilds and Jared, yeah.
And it was like 6:02. I'm like, this guy has to take Jerry Judy right here. Does.
Does, of course.
Does. I mean, that doesn't mean he'll win, but I'm getting better. I got 2 more weeks to grind, and then we'll be there. That'll be fun.
I love it.
I mean, it won't be as nice out as this. This is pretty good. The breeze, breeze. It's Napa vibes here in Grand Island, New York. All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Adam. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks to Dr. Abib Agbetoba for being with us. He has a main event at 9. I'm sure you can find it. I mean, maybe you can find it. I mean, a lot of these main event drafts, everybody has a show now.
That's right.
Everybody's got a feed, so you can probably find it. But we'll be on, let's see, Thursday is Jared's main event for Draft Sharks.
Are you doing that with them, Mike? Did you?
I'm going to be on with Matt, I think.
Perfect. Awesome.
On Thursday on the Draft Sharks feed.
Yes.
And then Sunday I have a local auction. Will that be on TV, or can we just finally do one that won't be on camera?
Do drafts actually mean anything if they're not on feed? I don't even know.
Do they exist? Do they exist if they are not on camera?
A stream.
We'll talk about that next week. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night.
See you guys.